actually came down with a fever that left me pretty much knocked out in my hotel room. It's not something I generally recommend doing when you're supposed to be doing field work. It left me pretty incapacitated. But this week I do kind of have a doozy for you. It might be a little bit long, but stick with me. I'm really excited about these insights that I've been getting here. So as I mentioned last week, I've been spending my time in Denton mostly focusing on one group of gamers and trying to get an in-depth understanding of their experiences. So the DM of this group is Liz. It's a gamer I met at North Texas RPG Con. And a little about Liz: she wears a lot of hats. She works IT at a local university, runs her own business building circuits for video art, and also makes some really fun psychedelic music. So I've been spending a lot of time with Liz, kind of reflecting on her sessions, her experiences in gaming, and what gaming means to her. One of the things that came up in our conversations is the topic of escapism. And I'm glad that Liz brought it up because it's something I've been thinking about. I've never been fully comfortable with describing gaming as escapism. Now, some gamers might use gaming as a way to step aside from their everyday lives, but I don't know that escapism is the best way to describe that. To me, escapism suggests kind of a fleeing from perceived danger, from like a trap or a lack of control. And in my observations, that's not what gamers are doing, or at least not what all of them are doing all of the time. And so in my conversations with Liz, it came up when we were talking about similarities between her performances as a DM and taking on that role and her performances as a musician. To quote Liz talking about her music, she says, "I don't like it when anyone feels like they're a spectator when they're watching me perform. I want them to feel like, not that they're part of the performance, more like that they've been taken somewhere and are being held hostage there, and are being beaten up in an auditory sense. So it's like kidnapping someone into my own world, or kidnapping the real world with that fictional one." So later, Liz connected with this with gaming in a post that she made and shared with me on Facebook and gave me permission to share with you. And here she says, quote, "Fuck escapism. I play D&D to force the fictional reality inside my head onto physical space and project it outward. I kidnap reality and hold it hostage for a few hours. I don't run from it. Ambiance and landscape are vital to me, and I approach performance with the same end goal." So this idea of taking reality hostage and forcing the fictional reality inside our heads onto physical space and projecting it outwards, these were very kind of captivating images and different ways of talking about gaming than I've come across before. So I've been thinking about what Liz mentioned. And so this is in many ways the opposite of escapism. Rather than retreating from the real world, we can think of gaming as imposing something onto the real world. But that raises the question, what are we imposing and why do we do it? So thinking about that, I see one element you can see in gaming, and that Liz mentioned with me, is the idea of control. So in gaming, I would say there's a degree of control over the fictional reality that we don't usually have in our everyday life. And Liz is quick to point out, I think a lot of gamers would agree, that this doesn't mean that we feel out of control in our daily lives, necessarily. In fact, in Liz's case, as a successful business owner and an artist, I would say that she has more control over her life than many people who don't game. But there's something about the way that we interact with a fictional environment in gaming. And Liz describes this as being able to draw the flowers and the trees and places all inside her own head and describe them and have it all come to life. So this being able to take something in your head and move it out into a shared imaginative space in a way that feels like you're accurately doing that and that other people are accurately receiving that and sharing in that with you. I think that's something that's very central to gaming, and it's something we see in other areas of life also. So I've been reading a lot about ritual lately, which is a recurring interest of mine. And you might think that ritual doesn't have anything to do with gaming, but ritual isn't just something that happens at like Catholic Mass or at a Hindu temple. It's something that is a part of our daily lives. We have all kinds of rituals that we participate in all of the time. We have rituals of courtesy, like saying please and thank you. So in this sense, ritual is about an orientation towards our actions, a way of thinking about them and framing them, rather than necessarily the type of action that we're performing. Some anthropologists have suggested that we should think of ritual, this specific type of orientation toward actions, as one of temporarily imagining the world as different than it is, taking an as-if stance towards the world and imagining what could be. So when we say please and thank you, we're pretending that the world works in a certain way. If I tell my daughter to please clean her room, there's an illusion, a pretending that we're both accepting there that the action is voluntary. And you can see it's an illusion by the fact that if she doesn't want to clean her room, I'll just tell her to do it anyway, and I'll probably do it with less of that ritual politeness because that ritual has broken down. But to be enacting these rituals by creating these imaginary worlds, we create a shared could-be imagination of the world that we share with other people. So what do we see about gaming if we think about it as a ritual of a could-be? What is the nature of that created world? Not just at the in-game level, but at the level of the game frame. The game itself is creating a certain ritual world. I think there's a lot of things in there. I'm going to share a few of them. I think we see a world where our words shape the nature of reality, for one, and that's a common theme in many rituals and magic practices the world over. We see a world governed by a finely tuned mixture of chance and skill, one where if we play carefully, we just might make it. We see a world where everyone contributes to the shaping of the future, where teamwork always pays off. We also see a world where things are mysterious, but one where bravery and curiosity can help us to understand those mysteries. We see a world where chaos in the form of random chance can be tamed and shaped into creatively productive ends through human ingenuity and interaction. I'll close by quoting Xunzi, a Confucian scholar from the 3rd century. And Xunzi says that heaven and earth are the beginning of life. Ritual and propriety are the beginning of order. The gentleman is the beginning of ritual and propriety. So ritual, and that includes gaming, is something that allows us to create order, or orders plural if you're thinking about different kinds of rituals. Looking at the nature of the order or world that a ritual creates can tell us a lot about the people that are doing it. And I think that's an approach to understanding gaming and gamers that remains largely untapped. As always, I want to hear your thoughts. What kind of worlds do you see the rituals of gaming enacting? What are these underlying rules? There's lots of things that I didn't mention that I've also thought of. To give an example, if you're playing old school D20 D&D, part of that imagined world is one in which 5% of the time, even the most skilled individuals completely fail because of critical fumbles. And that the idea, all of the rules being sort of ways of shaping that ritual world. So what are we pretending that the world is like when we step into the game, and what aspects of that are relevant to you is something I'd really like to hear back from. So I'll keep in touch with you. I will see you next week when I will be in Seattle.